So before we bought the BMPCC6K when it came out, we used to rent the BMPCC4K for certain projects. And the more we used it, the more we start to fall in love with the BMPCC4K. I think literally a day before we were gonna order the BMPCC4K, the 6K just came out. So we were like, oh my god, this is amazing. We just bought the 6K instead. So in this video, I'm gonna quickly talk about my favorite setup with the BMPCC6K that I probably used for 90% of all of the project that we shot. And the rest of the 10% is because we had to put it on a gimbal and it wasn't possible with this setup. So this is the camera, and there are 4 things that I do not like about it and that I'm going to talk about it before I start going crazy on what I love about this camera. So the first thing you notice when you get this camera is that everything is made of plastic, and obviously that's the reason why it's cheap, because you know they spend most of the money on the image quality instead of the whole body. It doesn't really affect the whole shooting experience, so it doesn't matter. So the second thing that a lot of people talk about it is the screen. Unfortunately, you cannot flip the screen, and so the screen is huge though. That's what I love about it. It's really huge and it's a touch screen, but you cannot flip it, and I'm gonna talk about how you're gonna solve this problem. But yeah, it's a big screen but no flip screen. And I heard that there was a company that they open up your BMPCC and they turn it into a flip screen for you. However, if there's any problem that happens after you change the body, there's no insurance or guarantee that you can ask Blackmagic to fix it for you. So the third thing that I don't like about this, that only happens with the 6K and not the 4K, is the protrusion of the mount of the camera. So the protrusion is almost the size of a roll of film. This protrusion actually caused a little bit of problem when I'm setting up the cage of this camera, and I'll talk about it as well later on. The last one is the button flip, the button cover. This thing is the thing that I hate the most. It is actually, to a point, it is annoying. As you can see, I cannot really close it completely most of the time, and it's really hard. It takes time to close it. It's just dangling around. I just don't like it. It also makes it hard for you to plug your USB-C and your audio cable, electricity cable, and all that. So I don't really know a lot about product design or industrial design, but if these cons that I don't like about are the ones that make this camera cheap and good internally, then just keep doing it. I don't mind. Keep it that way. Other than that, I think that this camera is one of the best things that ever happened to indie filmmakers in 2019. Shooting raw videos is it's like a dream to us. We used to have to hack our Canon 5D Mark II to be able to shoot raw footage. But ever since I used the BMPCC 4K, I was able to shoot the B RAW format and grade it directly in DaVinci Resolve. It was amazing. I have never seen anything like this. Right now, let's get straight into the setup that I used to shoot all of the video commercials that I did throughout the year. So the cage that we're using for the camera is from smallrig. It's the 223B. It works for both the BMPCC 4K and 6K. One small tip here that relate to the protrusion of the mount that I mentioned earlier is that sometimes if your lens is too big, you might encounter some problem when you're putting up the cage. So I would suggest to lock the body on the cage first without the lens and then put the lens on. One design that I really appreciate from smallrig is that at the bottom of their cage, they always include this magnetic hole that you can store your screw in it, and whenever you need it, you can just take it out. The handle that we're using is the NATO handle 1955. It's nice because you don't need to lock it with the screws. The lock is just this little twist. Now the camera does have a CFast card slot and also an SD card slot, but most of the time we don't use it because of the amount of videos we have to record. So instead we use the Samsung T5 SSD, and in order to lock your SSD on the camera, you're gonna have to get an SSD mount as well. The one that we're using is the smallrig 2245. I actually really like this mount because not only it has this lock for the SSD, but also for the cable. So during shooting, you're not gonna accidentally unplug the cable. Next, we're gonna deal with the battery. So I didn't really mention about the battery life in one of the 4 things that I don't like about the camera, is because I think it's totally understandable in a sense. It's like, how good can it be at this point? Because you're shooting raw files or even ProRes 422, obviously it's going to require a lot of batteries. So if you're just using the Canon LP series battery for your camera is probably just gonna last for around 20 minutes. And our solution to that is to use an external power supply. I don't think there's any official brands that has these mount plate power supply right now. The one that I'm using, I just found it on Amazon or somewhere, and it works with Sony batteries, the F970. It really depends on what kind of shooting you're doing. Like, I cannot really say exactly how long it lasts. When I was having an intense shooting, I probably use up to 4 of them per day. So now that you're done with the battery, technically you can just go out and go shoot, right? But as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have a flip screen. So we do use an external monitor. Sometimes it actually depends. Sometimes we don't use it. But the one that we're using is the Ninja 5. You can find it for $600 on B&H Photo. Not only it's a monitor, it can also do external recording. So just be careful when you're touching the screen doing shooting. You know, I think I actually burned myself once. After you're done with the monitor, basically this is a beast. You can shoot run and gun. Instantly you can put it on a tripod as well. The only thing is that if you want to put it on a gimbal, you're gonna have to take everything off and reset it for the gimbal. But for the past 2 to 3 projects I was working on, I did use gimbal quite a lot. So you guys have to know that the 6K is actually kind of wide, and so it's kind of hard to balance on a gimbal. And I think it doesn't work with the Ronin S as far as we tested it, but it does work with the Zhiyun Crane 3. And that's the one that we were using for our projects. So what we do is we separate all the shots that we're gonna do with the gimbal and the one that we use with the rig. So we don't spend a lot of time switching over and over again. That's it with the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.